A lot of MMO players are looking for the next big thing, and it can be kinda scary whenever a new shiny MMO is announced, trying to innovate on the genre, trying to excite you, surprise you, blow you away, only for more news to drop that puts people on edge. Uncertainty rolls in, doubt, then it releases and becomes a massive disappointment.
Because of its lack of identity, I could see it releasing, being enjoyed for a few short weeks or months, and then ultimately fading into obscurity.
Some people call it a scam, false advertising, pay to win, doesn't respect your time, not what people were expecting or hoping for. Or its servers go offline. Or it never gets a release. And some people, some maniacs, look at all of that pressure, all those expectations, all that risk and time and money and brick throwing. Good God, the internet is a vicious place. They look at all of that and they go, yeah, I still want to make an MMO. Game developers are fucking insane. For quite a few months now, I have had the opportunity to playtest an upcoming new MMO with the work-in-progress title Project Ghost by Fantastic Pixel Castle, a team made up of game developer veterans from Blizzard, Riot, ArenaNet, Epic, Cryptic Studios, BioWare, and being headed by Greg Street, also known as Ghostcrawler. If you ever played World of Warcraft or League of Legends, you know this guy's a big deal. How I was able to get this super cool opportunity is a bit of a long story.
I am 100 meters from your location and approaching rapidly. Start running.
But regardless, it means I got to play a bunch of the game and also try out their first official class, the Dreamblade, and have the opportunity to share my experience with you guys. Now, I do want to give a heads up. This video is not sponsored. I do not work for Fantastic Pixel Castle. No money has been exchanged. Literally all that happened was that Faye, the community manager, just messaged me saying, hey, we have a Q&A coming up. Want to make a video to co-release with it? And really, when am I ever gonna get another chance to make a video about an MMO's first class? But before I get into the Dreamblade, let me give you a rundown as to what Project Ghost even is for anybody who doesn't know about it. Project Ghost, title pending, is a new MMO that is being very open and transparent about its development process, which doesn't typically happen this early into an MMO's dev cycle. And that means game ugly. Seems I've found a bug. Yeah, so because FPC are focusing primarily on getting the game's systems and functions working first, it means they're prioritizing that before worrying about how the game looks visually for now, which makes sense. A lot of things are placeholder Unreal assets, but just like with the Dreamblade, they will be implementing more and more original assets and art once things actually start coming together in the back end. And they do have some art of their own, but it's also still early, and we will see them develop over time. And honestly, in an age where graphics are such a massive priority, sometimes even at the detriment of gameplay, I respect this choice a lot. Even if it means that right now, the game looks like a bucket of chewed up action figures. Oh, that also means it's my duty to put this on the screen. Sure, the graphics will obviously change, but just remember that even the gameplay is not set in stone. Every aspect of Project Ghost is on the table to be changed throughout the course of development. Does that excuse it from any and all criticism I or anyone else may have towards it in its current state? Absolutely not. In fact, one of the reasons FPC wants to show the game off so early is so that they can get feedback on things early, rather than invest too much time and work developing something that players don't even like, only to learn that they hate it after all that time and work has been put into it. Catch it early, change direction early. All right, yeah, that's good. Wait, stop right there. Take a step back. Okay, cool. All right, now I think you should take a few paces to the left. All right, yeah. Okay, keep going. Wait, no, FPC, no! Fantastic Pixel Castle's main goal with Ghost, as they claim on their official website, is to tap more into the social and community aspect of MMOs that some MMO players may feel have been a bit lacking in the modern day, which I also agree with how many quality of life conveniences that mean you can effectively play most MMOs solo, or at the very least without having to say a single word to another player. It does kind of make one question why it's an MMO in the first place, if it's not going to utilize the fact that there are thousands of other players in a space around you. Whether Ghost is able to achieve this or not, we'll have to see, but it does make me excited that that's what they're aiming for. I had a chance to play classic World of Warcraft during my subathon in April, and I really appreciated how no matter what class you picked, you had unique skills nobody else did, and vice versa, how others could do things that your class couldn't. Same thing with Final Fantasy XI and EverQuest 1 and a few other MMOs I've been studying to help get me a better feel and idea as to the different ways MMOs are designed. Now, I'm not saying Ghost is going to be imitating classic WoW or Final Fantasy XI or EverQuest or whatever, nor do I think it should. It's trying to be its own thing, but knowing that they're focusing on having you rely on other players, each person filling a specific role, like some kind of role-playing game, does make me a bit excited. And yes, this does mean that the holy trinity of tank, healer, DPS is going to be a main design staple for its classes. A main gimmick of Ghost will be what they're temporarily calling blue zones, or blue shards, which are essentially procedurally generated instance areas where a small party will go in, fight mobs, explore, complete optional objectives, get stronger in a sort of mini progression tied to the game mode that resets every run, gather resources, build structures that function as traps or buffs or whatever else, and at the very end kill a boss or complete some other main objective and move on to the next shard with an increase in difficulty, rinse and repeat. There will be more traditional open-world MMO areas called red zones for now that will be added as development goes on, but all the playtesting I did was in these blue zones, so that's where my experience was. I'll talk about my thoughts on it at the end after the Dreamblade, so hold your horses and hush your puppies. Now that I've given you a grossly simplified rundown of Ghost, let's talk about their first class, the Dreamblade. The Dreamblade is Guy with Big Sword, a melee DPS. Being the first class means it'll serve as a sort of base foundation as to the general capabilities of your average player character. I mean, it makes sense. If you're going to build a bunch of classes with their own unique identity and niche, there's going to need to be one that's the point of reference. For Mario Kart, it's Mario. For Dota, it's Dragon Knight. And so, here he is, John Fighterman. In the build that I played, there was one basic attack, 6 special abilities, and its sort of ultimate ability you have to build up by fighting enemies. Some of the abilities have cooldowns, some of them cost mana, none of the Dreamblades seem to have both for now. First, you've got your basic attack, called Sleepless Strikes, which I'm sure most Union workers are extremely familiar with. Slight tangent, I gotta talk about the combat of the Dreamblade, and by extension Ghost, which is a pseudo-tab targeting system. That means that by default, your character will auto-target whatever nearby enemy you have your camera pointed at, highlighted in yellow, but you're not locked onto only hitting that one thing. So, if you want to target something else, you can just move your camera around to look at it, then boom, you're now targeting that new thing without having to spam tab until it lands on the thing you want, or to try and click on the target. You can still press tab to basically lock onto the target you want if you prefer though, but I found myself liking the pseudo-tab targeting system. It's a nice hybrid between traditional tab targeting and action combat. We'll just have to see how well it works as development continues though. Back to Sleepless Strikes. This is a basic attack, which means, as of the time of writing, this will be in place of an auto attack system. You can luckily hold the button down, so no carpal tunnel syndrome to worry about. Each attack locks onto whatever it is you're targeting and moves you a little bit towards it. Finishing the combo also gets you back some mana that you can spend on Decimate, a big heavy hitting attack that deals a lot of damage. This will be your bread and butter and the main skill you'll be spamming. Glade Carver is a spin to win, a basic sweeping attack that lets you hit multiple targets, and using Decimate has a chance to reset its cooldown. Intimidate deals a large amount of damage by making the enemy question their life choices.
I just feel like I've been wasting my time. Like I look at some of my friends from high school and they've got families and careers, or a famous person my age, and I'm wondering if I did something wrong that means I'm just not good enough.
It also gives you mana regen so that you can spam more Decimates. Rude Awakening is a line AoE that can hit multiple targets, and Reverie puts the enemy to sleep for a couple of seconds, but you can still hit them without waking them up, so despite its flavor description, it is a stun, and not a sleep in the way MMO veterans would understand it. Lastly, Oathkeeper, your ultimate ability, which deals damage all around you and makes your Decimate always reset the cooldown of Glade Carver, as well as give you increased mana regen so you can decimate even more. From what I could understand, the basic playstyle of the Dreamblade is opening the Glade Carver to set it on cooldown, spending your mana by spamming Decimate, then recovering that mana with your basic attacks and abilities so that you can spam more Decimate, throwing in the occasional Glade Carver whenever it's off cooldown or when Decimate resets it, and then when your ult is ready, turn into a human Beyblade. You've got a little crowd control with Reverie when things get dicey, but for the most part, you're through and through a damage dealer. Big shock, I know. Talking with some of the devs one-on-one, I learned that they are planning on having ways to build your character so that you can sort of tailor your playstyle. Like, if you want to play a Dreamblade that focuses on Decimate without having to worry about also having to use Glade Carver or your mana running out. Or alternatively, if you don't really like either ability and prefer to just mindlessly hit things with Sleepless Strikes as your main form of damage. Or focus entirely on Glade Carver so that you can finally roleplay as the Tasmanian Devil. And this is good. I think many RPG players, not just MMO players, love building their character to be unique and specific to their playstyle. It's one of the biggest appeals of the genre. And I like that too. It adds variety, adds experimentation, adds replayability. Will there inevitably be a few objectively best builds mathematically? Absolutely. That's unavoidable. And I wish FPC the best of luck in mitigating that. But also, I think having the choice and freedom to do something stupid and silly will always be far more appreciated than limiting options for the sake of balance. One of my favorite gaming videos to watch is Can You Beat X with Y Stupid Playstyle Restriction? FPC set out to make their first class a baseline, with a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and I do think there's a little room for improvement here. Since the Dreamblade is kind of your typical warrior class with a few utilities here and there, I think it'd be worth considering some form of minor self-sustain, like a second wind type ability. It doesn't have to be a lot, you should absolutely be reliant on healers to heal you any significant amount. Having one that's just sort of a template may be good not only in making it a sort of entry point DPS for players dipping their toes into the role before trying the more risky glass cannon types, but also as a reference point for said other classes that will have more or fewer means of sustain. But even if they don't, I do believe this is a very nice baseline and they succeeded in what they set out to do, at least as far as this point of development. Let's put a pin in that though, and we'll get back to it later. The Dreamblade is straightforward, simple to understand, has a very clear intended rotation that I could see being built on with additional skills that can synergize or augment your kit, and I very much look forward to both its continued development as well as that of the other classes as they come. As far as the blue zones go, I have a lot of thoughts, so you might want to get cozy for this. Here's a heated blanket and some tacos. I'm gonna yap for a bit. I like the concept of blue zones, and I see a ton of potential in them, and a ton of concerns as well. First, the good. I love the idea of procedurally generated content for an MMO. One of the biggest gripes I have with a lot of dungeon-style content in Final Fantasy XIV, in World of Warcraft, in Guild Wars 2, in Destiny, which are called strikes and not dungeons. Dungeons are a different thing, but even they kind of suffer from this, is that after you've played them once, you're kind of done. That's it. That's the dungeon. Or in Destiny's case, the strike, but you know what I mean. And what does that mean for anyone replaying them? That it's the same thing every time, which is not inherently an issue. Sometimes you want to replay things that are familiar. But if you know player psychology, you know that players will optimize the fun out of your game. And if they are playing the same dungeons over and over, they will just plow through it as fast as possible when they already know where they need to go and what they need to do. Hell, Final Fantasy XIV straight up just makes their dungeons linear hallways because they know players won't bother to explore other avenues because they just want to get to the end as fast as possible, so they can just get their reward. So much so that they even went back to old dungeons and removed their gimmicks and alternate routes altogether to fall more in line with the newer linear hallway design. And that's fine, that works for that game. There is value in having content that you can just sort of turn your brain off and go through the motions like a routine. Thankfully, according to FPC, they do plan to have traditional handmade dungeons in addition to blue zones, so that's likely not going to be an issue.
Both is good.
Even so, my concerns about optimizing the fun out of the game and just plowing through this content without a second thought is something that I feel like most MMOs don't take into consideration. You know what doesn't have this issue? Roguelikes. people constantly play those over and over again, even after seeing every single possible enemy and item and modifier, because it's random every time, which means it's fresh every time. And that makes me excited for Blue Zones. It means that if they play their cards right, there won't be an optimal route. And the way it's designed with its run-based mini progression system, resources and secrets to find, special events and enemy encounters, that there's reasons to do things besides just book it to the boss immediately. The closest comparison I can think of right now is Risk of Rain 2, which is super fun. Of course, this is an MMORPG, so there are different design goals in mind. I don't expect them to go full roguelike to the same extent as Risk of Rain or Binding of Isaac or Slay the Spire, but drawing some inspiration from those games I think would do good to keep things fresh for the player, and also to soften some of the workload on the developers so that whatever content they make for Blue Zones doesn't just lose its flavor after the first time you complete it. Procedural generation and a little bit of random variation is a good way to make content shelf life last a little bit longer, or a lot longer, depending on how much you put in. Over the course of the playtests, I've already seen them start to implement more variations and modifiers and factors that can change run to run, and I want to say, hell yeah, do more of that. More things that can make each run different and unique. On the flip side, I'm a bit conflicted about the gathering and building system in the Blue Zones. One of the main rewards for beating mobs and gathering resources in Blue Zones, as it is now, is that you get some materials exclusive to Blue Zones, which means that once you're done with a run, they're gone. And these materials are used to build various different structures, like a totem that heals your health or mana over time when you stand near it, or a campsite that you can respawn at if you die, a staircase that can help you reach what would normally be inaccessible. On one hand, it is very unique and interesting, something we don't see and does set Ghost apart from other MMOs. On the other hand, I could see a lot of potential problems that I do hope FPC really take the time to consider, because I believe those problems could make or break Blue Zones. The main thing is, how important will building be to Blue Zones? If it's very important, are you content with it being a feature that is exclusive to Blue Zones? If you are, I worry that it then cannot interact or synergize too much with player mechanics, out of the potential problem that players will then become very accustomed to those structures, maybe even over-reliant, and without their usual tools when they're not in Blue Zones, they're going to feel that absence. This wouldn't be a problem if Blue Zones were the whole game and the player will always be building structures in every kind of content in the game, but as far as I understand it, FPC's plan for this is to be a core pillar about a third of the player's time in Ghost. There's still quite a lot of game that will not be using this building mechanic, as far as I understand anyway, in which case I wonder if this part of the game should be this important, or if it should be more like this. A small piece of side content, a special game mode, because this, well, that's quite a lot of time and mechanical learning that's just going to be thrown away and irrelevant for the other 2/3 of the game where building is not going to be a core function. With that much time building, players are going to feel like they're playing two completely different games when that building mechanic is gone. And if it's not very important, are you content with players completely ignoring the feature? If you are, I worry the feature may need a rework, either by reconsidering what structures everyone can build, or just making those structures abilities some classes have. A big concern I had with Blue Zones was that every time I was building structures, I kept thinking two things. Firstly, man, this menu is clunky. Secondly, and more importantly, this has nothing to do with me being a tank or a healer or a DPS, which again, feels like it's two separate games that don't interact with each other. I get it, maybe you don't want to restrict what the player can build, but then I feel as though that conflicts with the idea of having to rely on each other to do things that other classes can't. By having everyone be able to build a thorn trap, everyone has a crowd control. Everyone being able to build a health regen totem means that everyone has a heal, and that takes a bit away from that roleplay idea they're shooting for. I just want to say the irony is not lost on me that I literally suggested giving the Dreamblade a self-heal, but I think it's fine there because it doesn't have to be something that every DPS can do. In this case though, everyone can build. There was really no reason for any one person to be more of a builder than the other, and during my playtest, my group just let one person grab all the resources and lay all the buildings. Specifically me, because I cannot keep my grubby hands off the loot. which sure, is fine, but I felt as though the building and the RPG were two completely different games that didn't really interact with each other. When you're building, your class, your skills, your gear, none of that mattered. I want to do my best not to armchair developer, but at the very least I do want to suggest two potential solutions. One, de-emphasize building. Turn the structures into abilities or consumable items. I believe the foundations of what the blue zones are is strong enough to be built upon so that they don't really need a gimmick like building structures in order to spice things up. Adding a variety of enemies, mini-bosses, environments, hazards, events, that's going to be what makes blue zones shine and will work in synergy with the skills and abilities and systems at the player's disposal already. I'm sure no small number of people are going to negatively compare this building feature to Fortnite. I can attest, there is a very good reason people kind of don't like this. That said though, I know that FPC have spent a lot of time developing this system and that some of the team are going to still be pretty attached to the idea, which is why I don't think it's entirely a lost cause. So solution 2 is consider how your class may affect what you can build. Maybe the Dreamblade can build a war banner that buffs nearby allies' attacks. The healer class could be the only one who can build a healing totem. The tank could be the only one who could build a pile of thorns to slow enemies that start to aggro onto the mage, who doesn't know restraint and decided to go balls to the wall. And it could go beyond just role as well. Each individual class could have their own unique structure. Though I do understand that that is quite the design and development undertaking when you plan to have so many classes available. I still personally believe that you might as well cut out the middleman and just make them abilities or consumable items at that point, but I know there are going to be people on the team who want to keep building as a core feature. So this could go a long way in making it actually interact with the RPG part of the game, and not just feel like a tacked-on feature for the sake of standing out. I will say though that the building system does make me excited for any potential application for a player housing system or community-made content, but that's getting way ahead of myself. I also had a whole tangent written about applying this class-unique building system to other non-Blue Zone parts of the game, and then the idea of bringing in limited resources a la Monster Hunter into Blue Zones for a head start on resources came up, but then it just started to spiral out of control and went way too far into directing the game, and I don't want to do that here. But if anyone in FPC are open to hearing the idea, even just to keep it on the shelf forever, Faye has my number. I'm happy to chat about it. Don't get me wrong, Blue Zones being this important I think is fine, good even, but building, it's gonna need some work. With all of that out of the way, I wanted to give my final overall thoughts on Project Ghost on a larger scale as a whole. In that, to be quite honest, it's very bare bones. Like, really, really bare bones. The playtest was at an accelerated rate according to the devs I spoke to, so we were progressing at a much faster rate than what we should be expecting from the full game. But even so, because of a lot of the systems aren't in place yet, it just kind of felt like I was playing coopgame.exe. About 2 hours into each playtest was when I felt like I saw everything this version of the game had to show, which brings me to the pin. I don't know what feedback I can give, or if any of my feedback is even useful. There's not a lot of game to give feedback on. And I don't mean content, I just mean functions and systems. I appreciate how FPC are being very open to receiving feedback this early in development, and I think that's the right way to go. And they should absolutely keep listening as they continue to flesh out Project Ghost. But as it is now, I just kind of feel like I'm watching an artist paint a couple of lines on a canvas and asking, what do you think? What is there to say? I think I'd like to see more of the painting first, please. Regardless, I do hope my thoughts and feedback were of some help in some way. I know everyone at FPC is extremely passionate and excited to show off more of this game. Hell, I've even seen some of it myself, and it does look exciting, especially the lore and story stuff they have cooking up. Like this one, they showed me this about for any of that to matter, I think primarily the people in charge of the gameplay at FPC have to nail that gameplay and systems first and foremost. Like I said at the very beginning, when a new MMO is announced, a ton of pressure is on. I do not envy the team at FPC. All the directions Ghost is going to be pulled in by every MMO player wanting it to be what they want it to be, me included. Not to mention the difficult balance of any piece of commercial art. When to apply the changes your customer base is requesting, versus when to stick to your guns. I do hope that at the very least, what I've talked about was of some help or perspective, and that FPC continues to work hard and keep up that passion that I can clearly see from the whole team. And of course, thank you, Fantastic Pixel Castle, for giving me this amazing opportunity to try out the game and to make a video covering it. I very much look forward to seeing more. Hey, get away from that!